How did it all unravel so fast? We need to try and understand exactly what has been going on at Chelsea to try and grasp how a club can go from having an outsider's chance of being in a title race to suddenly being in total disarray a mere 4 weeks later. Just 20 days ago, Enzo Maresca was pictured holding the Manager of the Month award for November. Now he's gone. All it has taken is 20 days. And when you think about it, 2025 was not a bad year for Chelsea. We were back in the Champions League. We won European silverware in Poland. We also went to the United States to become Club World Champions. But by New Year's Day 2026, the architect of those victories was a goner. Now, something I think is very interesting is the official terminology. If you read the statement that Chelsea put out, the wording is very, very insightful. It says that Chelsea and Enzo Maresca have parted company, and that wording feels very deliberate. He wasn't sacked, and it appears that he has waived his compensation. So he was clearly desperate to get out of the club. And now Chelsea and managerial unrest have become synonymous with one another. And we are now looking for our 5th permanent manager since Clearlake and Blueco took over the club. But even by Chelsea's lunatic standards, the way that Enzo Maresca left the club is bonkers. I actually saw quite a wry parallel drawn. You know the film How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? It was coined How to Lose a Manager's Job in 14 Days. That's all it took. And like we've said, November was good. Maresca was Manager of the Month. But the second that December hit, it went wild. But the wheels fell off. He had an issue with the media duties. He had an issue with the medical team. And most importantly to me, we took 6 points out of a possible 18. And then within that, there was the public declaration that things were not well. When Enzo Maresca went public, off the back of beating Everton, ironically, off the back of a victory, a rare victory in December, the fact that he said he had the worst 48 hours of his managerial career was a real problem. And with hindsight, the writing was on the wall that very day. And when you think about it, Enzo Maresca has got away with it a bit. His reputation is intact. The job that he did at Chelsea is being painted in a very positive light. And Chelsea fans are 100% backing Enzo Maresca. I am. I have unilateral partisan support for Enzo Maresca. Not necessarily because it's Enzo Maresca. Not necessarily because I even like Enzo Maresca that much. But because if it becomes a debate between any manager and this ownership, I will back the manager wholeheartedly. But I think it's important to not pretend that Enzo Maresca is completely innocent here. The reason people are sympathetic to him is due to a burning hostility of the ownership. So with that in mind, what I thought we could do in this video is analyse it from everyone's perspective. Let's try and view the whole thing through the lens of the club and then through the lens of Maresca, and hopefully at the end conclude who is correct. Now, to put my cards on the table, I have a relentless burning desire to see Blueco leave Chelsea. Therefore, I think it is right and just that we focus on their perspective first. Let's try and see what Enzo Maresca did to them. Let's try and see this through the lens of Blueco. I mean, the first thing to flag here is Enzo Maresca planned to release a book. You know, Chelsea blocked the release of the book. Maresca denied the very existence of the book. But the fact that Enzo Maresca was thinking of releasing a tell-all book isn't necessarily what you would expect from an employee of a football club. On this particular front, I think it's fair to say that Blueco have a point. You can't have a situation where a manager is writing a tell-all book. It's exactly the same situation that happened, in fact, with Sir Alex Ferguson and Jaap Stam. And the reason that Jaap Stam was forced out of Manchester United, despite being one of the best defenders in the world, despite contributing to outrageous success at Old Trafford, the reason that he had to leave was because he wrote a book. So you can understand why Chelsea would have been hostile to the existence of this book. Maresca also spoke at an event. He spoke at an event put on by Gazzetta dello Sport that Chelsea forbade him from. So Maresca clearly felt like he had a story to tell, whether that was via the prism of his book or via these interviews, these unsanctioned interviews from the club. Maresca wanted to speak. Maresca wanted to speak. And that kind of desire isn't conducive to being a good manager, putting Chelsea and the furtherance of Chelsea at the top of your agenda. It feels to me self-satisfying, self-gratifying. And ultimately, I can understand why Chelsea would have the hump with this. I, to be frank, would have the hump with this. Write your book in a decade, mate. Rather interestingly, Enzo Maresca recently left Wasserman. He became a client of super agent George Mendes. Now, I don't get particularly precious about things like this. I like the fact that Enzo Maresca started dressing properly. You know, I thought he looked like a paraffin when he was like in that big Chelsea tracksuit. But some Chelsea fans got the hump, didn't they? That he was no longer wearing club-branded stuff. I thought he looked good. I thought he looked far more stylish, and it's exactly the kind of representative I want on the touchline of Stamford Bridge, to be totally frank. But it is interesting, the timing of it. It is interesting that the glow-up, if you want to use that term, it came when he had partnered with a new agent amid the Man City speculation. So within Enzo Maresca's Chelsea contract, he had to tell them about speaking to any other club. So the fact that Maresca had spoken to both Juventus and Manchester City in recent months meant that he had to declare that information to Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea aren't going to be happy with that. And what I also think is poor form from Enzo Maresca here, he basically said, with his new agent, that if he gets a new and improved contract, he will stop the conversations. Now, this isn't good news. This isn't something that Chelsea are going to be receptive to. Holding Chelsea over a barrel isn't something that you should do as the Chelsea manager. And I think Chelsea would have been scared. We know that George Mendes has a great link to Man City. We know that Hugo Viana and George Mendes go back for years. Hugo Viana, in fact, when he signed for Newcastle United, that deal was carried out by George Mendes. 2002. That was George Mendes' first foray into Premier League football. So Viana and Mendes go way back. They have a deep and entrenched friendship. And Enzo Maresca obviously has the links to Manchester City. So if you are on the Chelsea board here, you are going to be distraught because Enzo Maresca has admitted talking to Manchester City. Manchester City could potentially at some point over the next couple of years change their manager. And crucially, the fact that he is talking to Manchester City on a regular basis, on 3 different occasions that we know about, most recently off the back of us beating Everton, that is going to scare Chelsea. So you can understand why Chelsea would have their nose put out of joint here. Tell you what, just before I go any further, could you do me a massive favour? Would you consider clicking subscribe? I would love to welcome you into this community. I love debating these points with you. I love seeing what you have to say in the comment section below. It really does help me out if you would click subscribe. Thank you so much. Now I'll tell you what's bang out of order here. Like, I have absolutely no love for Bowley, no love for Igbali, no love for Bluco. But Enzo Maresca is being a Judas here. He is saying that he will stop talking to other clubs if he gets a new and improved contract. Like, he already has a contract. Surely you don't flirt with other clubs, even when you are in an existing contract. And you can't talk to other clubs mid-season and use that as some sort of genesis and springboard to get yourself a new contract. Like, you are 18 months into a 5-year deal. And already you were trying to secure more money by threatening to leave and already talking to other clubs. Like, that's a liberty. Like, it's such an unnecessary distraction. We have to start having contract negotiations with Maresca now, for 18 months in, to a 5-year deal. Like, we don't want to be doing that mid-season. We've got other things to focus on mid-season. So in this particular example, I don't think that Maresca has behaved in a chivalrous way at all. You know, Chelsea were already going to review the situation, the development, the progress under Maresca at the end of the season. And I think that's fair enough for everyone. I don't think these conversations need to happen mid-season. So in this, I think Maresca's getting it wrong. Also, you're Chelsea manager, mate. Like, that's a dream. You shouldn't be flirting with Juve or Man City. Like, if you don't want a job, I'd rather you not be there. And obviously, from the club's perspective, Maresca's handling of the press has been a disaster. The fact that he didn't even come out off the back of Bournemouth. Chelsea were booed off at full time. And the manager sends out Willy Caballero. It is a terrible look. Also, think about his comments post the Everton game. The worst 48 hours of his entire time at Chelsea, off the back of beating Everton. You know, apparently that was all aimed at the medical department. But again, it's just so spiky, so prickly, and so unnecessarily hostile from Enzo Maresca. You know, the medical department felt like Maresca was ignoring them. He was playing players in a situation where they shouldn't have been playing, and as a result, we were seeing recurring injuries. You think about the injuries to Reece James, Pedro Neto, Cole Palmer to a degree. So maybe Maresca is getting that wrong. But the club love rotation. The club love making sure that our squad are all getting minutes, all increasing their value. So I have no idea where I sit on this one. In fact, I'm inclined to believe Maresca. Overall, though, I think that Enzo Maresca will be over the moon with how this has played out. I think that his reputation is largely intact, if not exacerbated. I think across football, he's held in a very positive light. And despite saying that he loves the club, despite saying that he loves the players and the fans, I think that he'll be over the moon to get away from the shadow that is Clear Lake. But of course, we have to now see it through the lens of Enzo Maresca. We have to now try and visualise things from his perspective. And can you imagine working for Winstanley and Stewart? I'm already sympathetic. Let's see how we go. Maresca felt like the club were telling him who to pick based on players' value. Like, this is a travesty. The fact that you often see Stewart, Winstanley, Ed Barley marching across the pitch and heading into the Chelsea dressing room after a match is an absolute outrage, a total disgrace. They have no right to be in that dressing room. They have no right to have a conversation with Enzo Maresca about any first-team dealings. When you employ a manager like Maresca, what you are doing is you are handing over the reins of control to that manager. You are giving him the grace of picking the team. And you have absolutely no influence on that. And even more chronic than trying to have influence on it because you think you have a footballing brain is trying to have influence on it based upon financial advantage. Playing this player will increase his value, therefore make the club more profitable. But I don't think that player can do well in that position, in that game. It's irrelevant, play him anyway. Playing Tosin Adarabioyo against Leeds United was obviously not Maresca's choice. Signing Tosin Adarabioyo was obviously not Maresca's choice. Starting a season with Adarabioyo and Chalobah as our two fit centre-halves is obviously no manager's dream. So we have a situation where sporting directors and owners are trying to have a direct impact on game affairs, trying to dictate personnel, trying to dictate substitutions. And Maresca felt like when he would rotate as requested, it would have a detrimental impact on the team's results. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought that if you had a sporting director who has absolutely no qualifications to be in that role whatsoever, dictating to a manager like Maresca what should happen to the first team will not accrue as many points as you think. It's already a disgrace, isn't it? Like, we've barely started trying to see this through the lens of Enzo Maresca from his perspective. And I'm already fuming. Like, can you imagine how gutted he is? Can you imagine how embarrassing it is for him? He will be the public face that gets it in the neck when tweaks are made to the team that he doesn't want to make. So when he is told to make a tweak to a team and he makes that tweak and that player plays terribly, Malo Gusto was a number 10 away to Atalanta or whatever it is. When that happens and it doesn't work, we go, Maresca, you Burke. It's not even his decision. And that would chime with his comments about a lack of support. He's hung out to dry. They are making him play players that he doesn't want to play. They are forcing him into a situation to give footballers minutes on the pitch that never deserve it. Mark Yu is obviously not a Chelsea standard player. Benoit Badiashile is obviously not a Chelsea standard player. Jamie Gittins is obviously not a Chelsea standard player. And when these players are forced to play badly, Chelsea lose points, we all hold Enzo Maresca accountable. It's a disgrace. Like, Maresca knew the strategy of signing only young players, but he cannot have expected for his team selection to be influenced by the sporting directors. Surely the roles of the sporting director is to provide the utensils, not to tell the manager how to use them. And apparently he was happy with the quality of players signed. You know, I would disagree with that, but apparently he was relatively happy with the quality of players that were signed. He just didn't want any sort of interference on how to use them, and he wasn't granted that courtesy. You know, it's all very well for Maresca to say that everything was hunky-dory with the board, but he did have an issue, didn't he? Off the back of that Levi Colwill cruciate ligament injury, he did say that he needed a centre-half. He did vocalise his desperation for reinforcements in the back line, and yet none arrived. And when he was asked about it, I think his line was curt but really revealing. He just said, the club know what I think. But for one reason or another, he didn't have the fight then. And again, I feel so much sympathy here for Enzo Maresca. You know, when you think back to that Cole Palmer substitution, when Palmer was furious, and rightly so. The fans were furious, and rightly so. Now, with a little bit more knowledge, we can deduce that that probably, almost definitely in fact, wasn't Enzo Maresca's decision. He was told by the medical staff to take Cole Palmer off, when clearly Cole Palmer didn't think that he needed to be removed. Clearly the fans felt like he needed to stay on the pitch. Clearly Chelsea didn't win the game. We needed our best player on the pitch, and he was removed purely for bureaucratic reasons. You know, and Maresca was right. Off the back of the success, the relative success at least, that he managed to achieve in his first season, he believed that he deserved more. He deserved the kind of respect that is afforded to Mikel Arteta at Arsenal or Ruben Amorim at Manchester United. He did far better than Amorim in his first year, and yet Amorim is making big money signings for Premier League proven players and having a say on the kind of player that is signed by the club. Enzo Maresca is given nothing even close to that level of support. But amazingly and disgustingly, Chelsea were unwilling to give any manager a say and are unwilling to give any manager a say over signings in the future. You know, these sporting directors are in the club until 2031. Their contracts are secure. These managers are always having to pay the price. But it is what it is. The Todd Boehly Clear Lake Capital Consortium are now looking for, our fifth manager since they arrived. But what we know for a fact is that the next manager is going to have to work within these ludicrous parameters. And that's why it's going to be Liam Rosenior and not Zinedine Zidane. Because no one with any footballing gravity or presence would go anywhere near this ownership. So there we have it. There we have it. And I've tried to be as fair and just as possible. And despite trying to see it through the lens of Todd Boehly, I think that he and Eghbali and everyone involved in Blueco are the worst thing to have ever happened to Chelsea. Enzo Maresca had his faults, but ultimately, who can work in those conditions? The point I will make here, which I think demonstrates exactly where I sit on this debate, is everybody knows how much I love Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard is Chelsea's greatest ever player by a country mile. And I think that he will be an excellent manager in years to come. And yet, even someone like him, who I adore, I don't want him anywhere near Chelsea. Can you believe the words I'm saying here? I don't want Frank Lampard anywhere near Chelsea because nobody can work under these dunces, these ridiculous parameters, these ridiculous arbitrary rules, and these fools that call themselves sporting directors. Chelsea icons who I love, our greatest ever Frank Lampard. One of the best I've ever seen, Cesc Fabregas, both doing the business in management at the moment. Both of you should stay as far away from Chelsea Football Club as possible. You don't want to be tainted by these wallies that are running the club. What happens next for Maresca? I don't know. I mean, I think that he wants the City job, but I can't see that happening. I don't think he's anywhere near good enough. But he will go on to good things, I'm sure, and he will certainly have an easier ride of it. If you can work in these conditions at Chelsea, you can work anywhere. And you know what? On some level, I say good luck to Enzo Maresca. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. Please do me a favour. I'm really interested. The second this video goes live, I'm going to be reading your comments. Really interested to hear what you have to say about this debacle at Stamford Bridge. Thanks for watching. Please give it a like if you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Ta-da.